A suave, well-connected Egyptian official named Ashraf Marwan, son-in-law of the late President Gamal Abdel Nasser and rising star in President Anwar Sadat's inner circle, simply picked up the phone and offered to betray his country. He didn't ask for money at first, he didn't beg, he just delivered proof. Classified documents straight from the highest level of Egyptian power. The Israelis, stunned by the quality of what he brought, broke their own iron rule and recruited him. They reportedly gave him the code name the Angel. For the next 3 years, the Angel fed Israel a river of gold, Egypt's entire order of battle, secret arms deals with the Soviet Union, minutes from President Sadat's private messages and private meetings, war plans, even the precise state of Egyptian readiness. They believed that they owned the ultimate source in the enemy camp. In the month before Yom Kippur, President Anwar Sadat understood a brutal truth. Israeli intelligence was second to none. They could detect every movement across the Sinai. They could count every soldier, every tank, every convoy, when it moved, where it moved, and why it moved. And with the United States quietly feeding the Israelis satellite imagery and interceptions of Egypt's every step, they basically seemed doomed to be exposed before even the war began. So Sadat asked one simple question: how do you blind an enemy that can see your every move? The answer was as brilliant as it was terrifying. You don't hide the truth. You make them doubt their own eyes. You flood their intelligence reports with undeniable proof. Troops massing, exercises intensifying, war preparations unfolding in plain sight. And then you plant just enough doubt to make them refuse to believe what they're seeing. You turn their greatest strength into their fatal weakness. Perfect vision paired with paralyzing uncertainty. Because when an enemy can see everything, the only way to win is to make them question everything. So Ashraf Marwan was not just a spy. He was Egypt's masterstroke. According to mounting evidence from declassified files and multiple investigations, he was the spearhead of Cairo's breathtaking strategic deception strategy.
The Egyptians develop a plan. They develop one of the most remarkable deception campaigns of the last 100 years. They practice forming up their units, driving to the canal, and then they practice the canal crossing itself. And they do it over and over and over again. So that over the course of time, the Israelis just come to expect it. It just becomes a part of the scenery.
Beyond that, the Israelis have grown complacent in their defensive positions and believe the Egyptians pose no serious threat.
Since the Six-Day War, after such a famous victory, the Israeli army became to be too arrogant.
They believe something that wasn't true.
He gave Israel real intelligence, enough to keep them hooked, and believing he was genuine. But he timed it, shaped it, and poisoned it, exactly when it mattered most. By 1973, Israel was exhausted. They had just come out of the brutal war of attrition that followed their lightning victory in the 1967 Six-Day War. Years of constant alerts had drained their reserves and their patience. Israeli leaders had to convince themselves of something called the concept, the unshakable belief that Egypt would not dare attack without total air superiority, which they still lacked. So when Egyptian forces began massive, very visible mobilizations along the Suez Canal in early October 1973, the top brass in the Israeli military suggested just another exercise. The Angel's warning is probably another false alarm. They were wrong. On October 5th, the Angel delivered what looked like the final warning that war would begin the next day. But even then, the highest levels of Israeli decision-making hesitated. They saw the tanks, they saw the troops, they saw everything. Yet they chose not to order a full mobilization. The country was already wary. Another false alarm would cost millions and shatter morale. So they waited. October 6, 1973, Yom Kippur, the holiest day in the Jewish calendar. Egyptian and Syrian forces launch a massive surprise attack that stunned the world. The Bar-Lev line was smashed in hours. Israeli air power was initially neutralized by Soviet-supplied missiles, but for the first time since 1948, the Jewish state was fighting for survival on its own borders. Golda Meir, then Israel's prime minister, later called the war a nightmare that I myself experienced and which will always be with me. Defense Minister Moshe Dayan spoke of the destruction of the Third Temple, a phrase evoking total catastrophe. The angel had done his job. The plan had worked perfectly. Israel eventually rallied and turned the tide, but the initial shock of the Yom Kippur War changed the Middle East forever. And the man at the center of it all, Ashraf Marwan, lived in luxury in London for decades, a multi-millionaire arms dealer, until he fell to his death from a balcony in 2007 under circumstances that remain a mystery to this day. Was it murder? Suicide? We don't know. The final chapters of the angel's story is still unwritten. So the next time you hear about a trusted source inside enemy lines, remember the one unbreakable rule that Mossad broke. And remember the man who made them break it. Ashraf Marwan, Egypt's legendary spy, the angel who flew both sides of the storm and helped Egypt strike when Israel least expected it. Mossad learned the lesson. Never accept a walk-in. But how did the angel really die? Was he pushed by Mossad seeking long-awaited revenge? Silenced by Egyptian intelligence to bury their greatest secret forever? Or was it something entirely different? This is a story for the next episode.